So this small, or this big but not huge bet I'm not a big fan of, right? Because on the flop, you're going to have the best hand over 90% of the time, and we lost a lot of value on the flop. So you want to get some back on the turn by betting extra big. So table 1, so the sixes hand is table 1, king 4 suited hand is table 2, and table 3 is the king 9 offsuit hand. So I like the raise with sixes here. I would like to see a slightly smaller raise than 2.5x. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I'd like to see a raise a little bit smaller. From early position, I feel more strongly about that. But 2.5 is by no means a bad sizing. Now, if the stacks get much shorter, raising a little bit smaller makes more sense. The blinds do have 100 big blinds, but the button is a little bit shorter. Anyway, I like the raise. And king 4 suited is pretty close. It's going to depend a little bit on the lineup. So if the lineup is kind of tight, raising makes sense. If, let's say, the button is extremely aggressive, it makes a little bit less sense. So I see that the button is playing 47, 32, 11, which is very, very aggressive. So tightening up a little bit is by no means bad. King 9 off would have been an open raise on the button, but we can't call, obviously. So I don't mind the raise again. Let's go back a sec. So we get 3-bet with sixes here, and the awkward thing is that we're not very deep. So if we flop a set, we have less in terms of implied odds, and also he made it really large. So if had he made it around, let's say, 7.5 blinds, it would have been a slightly better call. The issue with hand like sixes is that if you don't flop a set, it's going to be very, very difficult to win the hand. So I generally like being kind of tight with calling 3-bets out of position. Obviously, you have to sometimes call, even though we don't want to. We can't just give villain too much fold equity. But I would like to see, us just fold here. Going all in would be too aggressive normally, so unless, let's say, the button is completely out of line, I would say just folding is best. So king 4 suited, the small blind cold calls, and when he cold calls, his range is a little bit stronger than when, let's say, the big blind cold calls, right? Because the big blind is likely defending a hand like, Jack 7 suited, which is not a great hand, but it's a winning defend in the big blind compared to folding. But the small blind may not be calling hands like that, so against a small blind, you have to be a bit tighter because he can have hands like ace-queen on his board, or 4s, maybe 10s, hands like queen-10, and he's not going to miss this board completely so often. So I think just going with a really small, really high-frequency bet is a little bit of a lazy strategy. As for this hand, you have a pair of 4s which get a little bit of value and need some protection, and you can turn this hand into a bluff sometimes. The problem is that you don't have a backdoor flush draw, right? So if you wanted to bet this hand, betting with the backdoor flush draw generally makes a bit more sense, but not always. So we see these players from Mongolia. I can't remember the last time I saw a player from Mongolia, so I don't exactly have player reads. We know that the Brazilians are very aggressive. We know that the Scandinavians are very aggressive. We know that the Germans are very nitty. Sorry, Germans, but you generally are. I don't have a read on Mongolian players, unfortunately. So I guess that's the end of that's the cap of my my skills. So I don't hate this play necessarily. It also depends a lot on how loose you think the small blind is, but this board is not as good for you as you would think because he's cold calling a lot of hands like ace queen, maybe 10s, maybe king 10 offsuit, that type of stuff. Hearing some sounds in the background. Really good card, this queen. And I'll probably end up checking behind here. You could bet for protection, let's say, but you're going to get check raised quite often, I would say, by both draws and queen X and some slow plays. So I would just check behind and hope to win a showdown. Triple barreling, in theory, is not the worst play, but it is a little bit aggressive against a player whom you don't know at all. We open on a gun with ace king and get the jack 4 deuce, which is a very dry board. Not much happening, right? As in, both of you will have a lot of jacks, but neither one of you will have many fours or deuces. So the sets you do have to be worried about. But other than that, I mean, there's a flush on board, but other than that, there's not much going on. So yeah, I don't mind this small bet at a high frequency. I also don't mind the avatar. It's a really good avatar game you've got. An engineer bets a little bit under half pot, which is very close. So you see, we need to win around 24% of the time. So for that sizing, he could definitely value bet a 10, maybe a hand like pocket nines, or maybe he has a hand like ace 7. Having a king is also not great, right? Because if villain has like king jack or king 9, you don't block that. So it's kind of close. Let's see. We've got 6 hands on this gentleman, and he's played 20 and 0 so far, which tells us basically nothing. So I would say this is very, very close. If had he bet bigger, I would have definitely folded. But do we win this hand over 24% of the time? Probably yes. I would say this is a very, very close call. But you know the 100 Zoom player pool better than I do, so maybe these guys are a little bit on the nitty side, a little bit on the straightforward side, in which case it makes less sense to call. So yeah, very, very close spot. King 9 is a reasonable bluff. It's also a reasonable hand to flat call in a small blind if you have a flatting range there. When you pay a lot of rake, it doesn't make as much sense to start flatting a lot because you see more flops, and when you see a flop, you get raked. And when you get raked, I was going to say Daniel Negreanu gets paid. I guess he doesn't get paid. I guess a stinky guy... never mind. I'm not going to start that. It's too early for rants, so guys, never mind that. But you get the point, right? Like, if you want Pokerstars to get rich, flat call a lot. If you want to get rich at lower stakes, don't flat call a lot. Sometimes we have to. Sometimes despite being disincentivized to call, sometimes we just have to because that's the best option, but we'd rather not. Let's see some questions. All right. Oh yeah, also, we have a promo going on for a limited time, so if you want to save 20% on our products, you just type in special discount at the checkout and you get 20% off, but it's only a limited discount, so just like the webinar, all our stuff is, our promotions have an expiration date. So if you want to check out any of the products, just go to BluffTheSpot.com, and I can log in again, so I can actually type that. That was actually me typing it for once. So yeah, if you want to get 20% off, check it out, guys. If I don't watch this live now, will it be saved on Twitch to watch later? You can if you're a subscriber, Jonas. Let's see. What was the biggest cash online earning in 2019 that you heard of? I mean, that's hard to say, right? Because those tracking sites, they're not that accurate as far as I know. But, maybe they've gotten better. And you also, I mean, for instance, on one tracking site, I saw that Limitless won 1.2 million, but he lost over 2 million on GG playing tournaments, right? So you would think on one hand he's the biggest crusher ever, on the other hand he's the biggest loser or one of the biggest losers in that game, right? So how much money and how much action did he sell, whatever? How much money did Limitless make? I don't know. Only he knows, right? So I don't like looking at those types of dry samples. You had that back in the day on High Stakes DB. I think I've 30k hands lifetime on High Stakes DB, even though I've played millions, right? And even at high stakes, I've played hundreds of thousands. So, yeah, I don't think it's that relevant, to be honest. I just like judging my opponents by the way they play. If I just see them make very good plays all the time, they don't make too many stupid plays, that's when I think they're good. Not just with some kind of graph that that is likely not accurate. Daniel Negreanu has gone to GG, which is even higher rake. Well, he wanted to make more money. Which limits can you beat without a solver if you have a decent exploitative strategy? Well, I mean, some people don't really study with Pio, but they just see other players use Pio strategies. and they copied them, right? So if you were to not use them, you could probably beat NL50. But probably not more than that. So some people, they just know when the board is dry, you just range bet 1/3, and maybe they don't really know why. They haven't looked it up themselves, but it's still often correct, right? Is Jay Nandas better than Runchucks? I do not claim to be a PLO expert, but as far as I know, Runchucks is way better than Jay Nandas. Jay Nandas is like a solid nitty mid-stakes player, whereas Runchucks is one of the better high-stakes players. So I would say there's still a pretty decent difference. But again, I'm not a PLO expert. At what stake are you switching from Exploit to GTO? I mean, it's not a binary strategy option, right? So I would say try and play a fundamentally sound strategy, but use exploits when possible. And obviously, the more you go down stakes, the better they work. At my stakes, I mean, my opponents are quite good, so going for like crazy exploitive strategies doesn't work as well. Thoughts on Clucka? He's a good player. Have you played with Lux Poker? When he crushed at 5 on Zoom a few years ago, I thought he was quite good, but then it was kind of weird because he went on a big upswing, it seemed, and then he just disappeared and then just came back and played an entirely different strategy. So he's a bit confusing. He also loved to tilt. And I always thought Lux Poker is a meme, but I only figured out it was Luxembourg Poker 17, not that long ago. But I'm very bad at spotting that type of stuff. How much time will it take me to beat a decent stake at PLO? I can beat up to 100 in L. That really depends, Nazgul. That really depends. I mean, what do you mean by decent stake? If you've spent years, playing an NL, now can beat NL 100, right? You would probably also need to spend a decent amount of time practicing PLO in order to beat PLO 100. So speeding up you can speed up the process by obviously getting coached. We have a PLO stable you can check out. You also have run-on-ones videos, all kinds of tools. So you can speed up the process, and it won't take you years because it took you years to start from nothing, right? Whereas now you already know a lot about the game of. You already know a lot about poker in general. So a lot of the no limit concepts translate to PLO. Would you flat call a little bit more in position on the button and the cutoff with hands up play while multi-way when you have like 3 fun players at the table? Yeah, sure. Of course. What's up, 3 Ayuru? Hello, MMA. What do you think about Peter Clark? I don't know who that is. I know who Peter Clark is, but not Run-on-One's Peter Clark. Yeah. Who's the biggest winner at Cash Game in 2020 so far? I have no idea. I don't use any of those sites, so I don't really care either, right? Like, if Limitless wins a couple buy-ins at 20k, does that make him the best? Playing 20k heads up, deep stacked? I don't know, right? So I don't really care about that. I just know who I think plays well, and that's the guys I think are at the top. Even if they lose a lot of flips or they lose setups or whatever. Anyway, let's go back to the footage. I want to know what happens with these aces, but I guess we won't find out. Queen 8 is a little bit loose of an open on the button, but, at lower stakes when you can't defend your blinds as wide and when people likely, don't really put pressure on you, they fold a bit too much, it could be a good open. So it depends on how you think the big blind plays, but it is a little bit loose. I don't hate it. Can we open this hand against OTB all the time? Probably not. But at the same time, I'm sure the big blind is a good player, but he's not OTB, right? And on the 4-4-4 flop, we can just be super aggressive. Yes, he likely has a few more 4s than we do. We're not going to open 8-4 suited on the button, most likely, but he'll probably defend it. So he'll have a few more quads, but, we have better ace highs, better king highs, better overpairs. We don't have as many trashy hands as he does, so I would like to see you just be very aggressive, just c-bet at a very high frequency for a small sizing. And we can put a lot of pressure on our opponent here because he just doesn't have big overpairs. The only way he can fight back is by just, defending with quads. Other than that, we just have every advantage. So I'd like to see you pound this flop. Not necessarily this flop, but I would like to see you be aggressive on this run out. Ace Queen is an easy 3-bet. We should 3-bet quite depolarized here. And Jack 5 with the rake against 3x, I would just fold. Yeah, good fold. And we turn an 8 here. We turn basically the nuts, right? Basically nuts. I don't think villain has 9s plus very often, so unless he check called exactly a 4, we should be ahead. So I'd like to see you be quite aggressive here. You can actually use a million sizes here. You can go all the way from 3rd pot to 3/4 pot to 1.5 times pot. It just it depends on what you're trying to accomplish with your hand, right? Villain shouldn't have many 8s here. He's going to check all ace 8 offsuit, maybe king 8 suited, but not many other 8s. Ace Queen is an easy open raise. And Queen Jack is close, but, you know, with 2 big cards, you're preventing a lot of 3-bets. You're preventing a lot of flat calls, so this hand is decent. Post-flop, it doesn't work as well. It's also not a hand that can really 4-bet or call 3-bet, so I think it's a winning open, especially in games where villains likely don't 3-bet you that much. So you see the cutoff is 3-betting 6.5%. That's not very much. Button is 3-betting 7.5%, also not very much. The big blind is 3-betting 4.7%. The small blind seems kind of nutty, but he's played 9 hands, so that means nothing, right? Maybe just, could have been like 1 out of 4 hands or something, or, 2 out of 8 hands, and maybe he just happened to have 2 good hands. So that's not enough of a sample. So I think Queen Jack is a raise here. Until Under the Gun decided to steal the pot. Ace 8, I like the raise. And Ace King 3 is a very interesting board. You can do whatever you like on this board. You just have to be very aggressive, right? So some people range 1/3 here. Some people bet like 3/4 pot. Some people overbet the flop. All strategies have merit. So I use a big sizing here, but it also depends on your opponents. There is a million factors at play here. So I'd like to see a big bet. And with Ace Queen, we can sometimes check behind with hand like, Ace 6, let's say, some weaker aces, some weaker kings, pocket queens, but Ace Queen, mostly you want to end up betting here. Villain shouldn't have Ace King much, right? So unless he has specifically like Ace 3, 3s, King 3, it's very difficult for you not to be ahead. So again, it's very important, guys. It's very important that when you are whenever you are at a large range advantage, you have to put in a lot of money. You really have to pressure your opponent. So by making a lot of big bets. Maybe you're not yet on the flop. Maybe you want to start off with a small bet, and that's fine. But especially in later streets, you really want to make the pot big when you have a big range advantage. One thing here, it's kind of funny. One thing is kind of funny here. You see all these notes. I think that's your note game can improve a little bit. You see you see here all this information. You guys can't see me hovering over the bottom left table. You see like snap call when weak and blah blah blah. Okay, some of this stuff makes sense, but you've basically summarized a bunch of hands. And if let's say you have 15 seconds left in a big spot where maybe a read will get you to make the tough fold or make the tough call, you're not gonna read any of that, right? So stick to more basic notes. Like snap jam bluffed 3 times, right? Levels, snap sizing, whatever, or like insane bluffs, stuff like that. That sounds kind of vague, and it is, but you just don't have time to read that entire manuscript, decide how it will work in your favor, right, and then make your decision. You just don't have enough time. So just keep your notes kind of quick, right? So you see like limp 3-bet under the gun, that already makes more sense. I don't think that's a really relevant note, right? He just did something. Now, if it just says like limp 3B under the gun, 5 deuce suited, okay, we know that's just ridiculous, right? Like maybe ace 5 suited makes sense, or like pocket kings makes sense. But just, okay, he limp 3-bet under the gun. Okay, so he may not be the best player ever, right? But, we need to get something out of the note. But right now, I don't think we're really getting anything out of them. So I'd like them to be like very short, but very specific. Jack 10-5 is a pretty good board. There's not much to worry about. There's no flush draw. No straight has gotten there yet. The Jack and the 10 are generally favorable for you. It's just a pretty dry board we can be quite aggressive on. So well, some people decide to have big bets and small bets, or only small bets with full range. Some people mix it up. I'd like to see you be quite aggressive on a board like this. Ace 8 is one of those hands that doesn't have a ton of EV. Generally when you bet here and he folds, you have the best hand anyway. This hand does have okay backdoors, having an 8 and an ace for the backdoor straight draw. And this is also not a hand that can check call very easily, so I would have preferred a bet, but if you play a mixed strategy here, I don't mind giving this one up sometimes. If you always bet all these types of backdoor hands, like, queen 4 and whatever, then you're often just going to check fold a turn. Villain bets half pot, and I think this is just a fold. We can still continue with hands like pairs and ace queen, ace king, that type of stuff, or like even this hand with the backdoor flush draw. So I would just like to see a fold. Let's go back to the ace king hand. So you're betting 1/3 pot. If you plug this one in pie, it will tell you to overbet or check, but there's definitely merits to betting third pot. It is definitely like the strategy basically is slightly worse in EV. At the same time, it's much easier, so you make fewer mistakes. Also allows you to multi-table more, but I'm somebody who prefers like quality of play over volume generally. I think betting bigger makes more sense, but if you feel like you're not comfortable with that strategy, like it's better to play a good strategy very well than a really good strategy poorly, right? So I would say for the next time you have coaching, I would say like working on the mixed strategies in position is a good topic, right? That we find different types of hand histories where it makes sense to both range bet small or bet bigger or do a bit of everything. And then we look at where to do what, and also obviously not just to say, okay, we do this, we're finished now, but also say which hands do we select at which frequencies, what do we look at when it comes to our opponent, and the positions and the rake and the pool, so we can improve our strategy. And that is not easy, right? That is quite difficult. So when something is quite difficult, it takes a lot of work to master. At the same time, once you've mastered it, it can give you a big edge over your opponents because few other opponents are using the strategy, especially this well. The 8 is not the best card, but not the worst, as in King 8, Ace 8 get there. Pocket 8s he probably defends against 1/3 pot, or at least he should. So, but, we are going to have pocket 8s too. We are going to have ace 8, king 8, at least suited. So, I would like to see you make a pretty big overbet here. It's also important to have some hands that can check behind that are pretty strong. So, we can trap with some other hands, but ace queen is usually going to end up being a bet. So this this big but not huge bet I'm not a big fan of, right? Because on the flop, you're going to have the best hand over 90% of the time, and we lost a lot of value on the flop. So you want to get some back on the turn by betting extra big. So I don't really like betting small, but then not betting that big on the turn. So you should go small on the flop and then huge on the turn, or you should go huge on the flop and then, big on the turn again. But right now we're just not putting in enough money when we have a very strong range, right? So here, as I said, he's gonna have pocket 8s, he's gonna have some hands like ace 8, but he's not gonna have aces, he's not gonna have kings, he's not gonna have ace queen all the time. Once he doesn't check raise a flop, he's removed a lot of hands like ace 3 and king 3 and 3s. Maybe not all of them, but he's gonna remove a lot of those hands, right? So yeah, you're not pressuring him enough. And yes, sometimes he has ace 8 and he calls the turn and maybe you check behind and lose, right? Or you bet the river 3/4 spot and he calls and you lose, right? I'm not saying that your hand is never behind, because sometimes it is, but you can't just say I'm just going to bet small or not bet at all just because my hand could be losing, right? That's a very defensive and paranoid attitude. You have to be pushing your hand and pushing your equity, and sometimes you lose, right? Sometimes you make a thin value bet, and your opponent calls it better. That's fine, right? But your hand is still best almost always. So I'd like to see you put a little bit more pressure on your opponent here. You're kind of letting him off the hook. The queen is a relevant but not super relevant card. you know, the flush gets there, which is important. Jack 10 gets there. And I guess ace queen improves. But ace queen was usually already ahead on the turn. So I'd like to see you bet big again, but not massive. He can have all the, you know, king 5 of diamonds type of hands, you know, king 7 of diamonds, that type of stuff. So you can go absolutely nuts here. At the same time, I think we can end up value betting. We can also have plenty of decent flushes here. So I'd like to see a bet. If you had something like ace jack, I think checking back makes a bit more sense. Or at least you would want to have a diamond in your hand. And yeah, sometimes he check raises king 7 of diamonds, and we'll probably have to fold, but maybe have to call sometimes, and we're kind of screwed, right? Okay, villain folds pretty fast. So he likely just had a medium ace, right? A few more hands and then we'll look at the questions. King 7 is a little bit on the loose side, but if you believe that this guy is bad or nitty or a combination of both, you can make a loose raise. I don't know this gentleman. Jack 5 suited is a loose but good defend with this rake structure. And unfortunately, you're screwed. Ace 9 is a really good board for him position, and he's gonna c-bet a lot, and you're not gonna have very much, right? Because, I mean, with 2 aces on the board, you don't have many aces. You're gonna have a decent amount of 9s, but you also can't have a flush draw. You can't have a straight draw, so you'll have some hands like, you know, pocket 5s. You'll have some hands like king jack, some decent hands, but you're just not gonna have very much. So yeah, villain is gonna make a lot of money. That's unfortunate, but it happens, right? And 8-9 is a fine open as well. I'd like to see you check this flop multi-way. Both guys are gonna hit this board quite hard, so you have to be a bit careful. Wait, did it say blab? I'm going back right now just to see the note. I want to see your note game. Or your tagging game. Blub blub. Okay. Interesting note. 5-3 deuce is not a very good board for you. You're going to have all the sets. You're going to have ace 4, probably 6-4. But villain will have those as well, and he's going to have more pairs. So this board is not great for you, so I would like to see you check this board quite often. King 7 is one of those hands. You know, you have a backdoor straight draw, but it's not great. You don't have a backdoor flush draw. You have king high, but if you bet, he's never folding ace high, right? So, and he's probably not folding king queen or whatever either, unless you bomb it. So your hand doesn't accomplish a whole lot. You could end up betting here if you want to have any bets here. But, you know, it's very easy to just bet this flop a lot and then just check fold the turn, right? Or to just get raised off your hand. So I would be careful here. Quick check by villain. So if he had a set, he, you know, might have thought about it a little bit longer. But maybe not. I've seen people snap check behind sets plenty of times, so but who knows? It's something to look out for. So, you know, at high stakes, I don't really look into timing tells much unless it's a recreational player because, you know, regs do a pretty good job of that. So, and sometimes they don't, but it could just be a trick. So, yeah, at higher stakes, I kind of ignore it unless it's like a recreational player who, like, you know, does it all the time. Live, it's a pretty decent tell, especially even with regs. There's this one reg I play quite often, and, you know, he loves nothing more than to take pictures of himself when at the table and post them on Instagram and social media and whatever. And every time he does that, and he's just like not really looking at his hand at the table, he just check folds everything over like a huge sample. But then when he leans forward and he's, you know, paying attention, all of a sudden he doesn't fold anymore. And he, you know, he's got something. Maybe he doesn't have a great hand, but he's got, you know, a hand he can fight with. So yeah, against recreational players, and I'm not saying that the big blind is one. You know, you can pay attention to that. 9-8 is a hand that needs protection, but, you know, would hate getting raised and doesn't get much value, so checking makes sense. Pressure, pressure, pressure. You are betting a decent amount overall. That's good. a lot of players in the pool are a bit on the nitty side when it comes to just like, just being too short on happy and just too passive. And 9-8 here is pretty close. He bets a little bit under half pot. The problem is that for this sizing, he can bet a lot of better hands, and you don't really have many outs, right? So, I mean, even if the river's a 9 or king, like on the king, you probably call. On 9, you can only call, right? Unless he bets really small. So, he's played one out of 11 hands yet. So, it's very close. Honestly, I would just fold against them. But is it very close? Against an aggressive player, I would definitely not fold. And I guess Kuza's the guy who limp 3-bet under the gun, right? So if he promises to just limp call, then, ace-6 is not the worst multi-way hand, having a suited ace-4-way. But if Kuza ends up limp 3-betting, that really sucks. I would probably fold, to be honest. I mean, he's got 18% 3-bet so far, so I would guess that this guy's going to limp 3-bet quite often. So actually, somehow this note, which I deemed, not useless, but not that specific, actually, helped you a little bit, except that you still called. He limp 3-bet, right? Okay, he can do it, but does he limp 3-bet 5% of the time? Does he limp 3-bet every time? Who knows? And so with 9-8 here, I mean, it's tempting to just check raise here when he just bets 1/3 pot in position. I think all three options make sense, but honestly, I think he just has like Jack 10 and he's just making a thin value bet, or like King, Queen Jack, Ace Jack. Maybe he just got it and he's trying to trap you. Yeah, so this is kind of the issue, right? Like we call the turn, the river is really good, as in it doesn't hurt us, and then he bets small, we still fold. So yeah, it's a shitty spot to be in. No fanciness with the a6, okay. Queen Jack Deuce is a pretty good board for both of you. When you open under a gun, you're going to hit this board quite hard with hands like, some maybe deuces, but definitely queens, jacks, queen jack, ace queen, king 10 type of hands that just have good equity. But he's going to have a lot of those hands as well, right? He's 3-betting 2.6% of the time. That's really low. So he could have hands as good as pocket jacks, let's say. So yeah, it's a board you can't be too crazy. It cannot go too crazy on. Let's finish that hand and we'll look at another question. So he bets 3rd pot against our ace-7 suited. And unfortunately, I think we just have to fold. He's just doing very well on this board. He's not 3-betting very much, so he's going to have a lot of hands like ace, queen, and jacks, and 10s, and queen 10 suited, and king, queen suited, etc. And he's playing 29 VPIP, which is kind of loose for 100 NL, but it's not like he's calling 5 for offsuit here, right? And we just get to go crazy. So I'd like to see you fold. It's kind of tight, but unfortunately, we just have to fold. King Jack is it's a loose but fine open. All right, let's pause it and then we look at some questions. Very serious today, right? Very high pace. Very high pace. Let's see. All right. Let's look at some questions. Let me sit down. Ugh, I've had enough of the stand-up desk. Time to be lazy again. Ugh. And I'm hungry already, guys. Already complaining. Let's see. Whoa, so many questions. I love it, guys. Keep it up. Keep it up. What is the softest side you've heard of for mid stakes these days? Well, it's not just about how soft the side is. It's also about how trustworthy they are and how high the rake is, right? I mean, basically the lesser known sides are the softest ones. Thoughts on Patapong? He's a cool guy. I've never met him. I mean, I know his name because I have him on Skype, but obviously I'm not gonna tell you. Yeah, he's a cool guy, it seems, and you know I think he's had good results for a while now. Weidman versus Hermansson. I mean, Weidman has had trouble with guys who hit hard, basically, right? Hermansson is not one of those guys. Hermansson is just like a funky pressure fighter. But Weidman is not a guy who gasses that quickly. So, thing is, he will not be able to use his wrestling that easily because, you know, Hermansson is good on the ground too. So, I'll pick Hermansson. I think that Weidman is kind of out of it at this point. Even though, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, I think Weidman would have taken care of him pretty easily. I think Hermansson is not a very athletic guy. He has quite a few leaks. But a lot of guys, like, he matches up well with a lot of guys. As in, they are good, but they cannot exploit his leaks. Can Aldo beat Cejudo? He could, but I don't see it happening. Again, like, I don't like betting on guys who are in their mid-30s who've taken a lot of damage versus guys who've taken almost no damage. I mean, Aldo is a better striker than Cejudo, but Cejudo just has better cardio, more pace, better wrestling, even though Aldo has probably arguably the best defensive wrestling in MMA, especially for a non-wrestler. I think, I mean, you know, they both have experience, but I think Cejudo is just fresher. He's at the top of his game right now. So yeah, can Aldo win? For sure. Also, Aldo hasn't really been leg kicking, which I think is necessary, and he hasn't really packed the one punch knockout power the way he used to. I use the RNG that is provided with Stars Helper. Alright, that's fine. I love this content more than the 500 Zoom. Thank you, Sick the Joker. The quality is not so good, right, guys? Is it? So when I look at the screen right now, it's a little bit vague. You guys have the same issue, or does it just look that way? Maybe because I zoomed in a little bit. Wouldn't using a third pot bet on that turn in the 4-4-4 hand be a mistake? In theory, it wouldn't really be a mistake, but you just have to know how to handle it, right? You have to know how to adjust your strategy, but it's also important to put in a lot of money there with good hands. Geez, I'm touching my belly and it's gotten really big. I have no idea why that is. It's definitely not because I've been eating chocolate every day without working out. I know. I was going to get up and get a cookie, but no, not yet. What's up, Blade? Better late than ever. 273 viewers. That's really good, guys. Thank you. It's kind of funny, like, whenever I think I've got a really sweet topic for you guys, nobody tunes in. Like, you know, like reviewing Truth Teller at 200, 400, nobody tunes in. But then when I review one of the students playing NL 100, all of a sudden, many people tune in. So, you guys are as confusing as ever, but I do appreciate the support. Can everyone participate in your CFP program? Yes. Yes. I believe the minimum requirement is NL5, so if you were playing NL2, you have a little bit of work to do. Obviously, you have to be 18. We've had requests from people who are underage who've been playing on their dad's accounts. Obviously, we don't want to be involved in stuff like that. You know, we're not going to judge you, but at the same time, we don't want to, you know, we don't want to be blamed for anything. So yeah, as long as you play minimum NL5, you've got a good work ethic, you're willing to get better, you're an honest guy or girl, yeah, of course, you can join. So guys, if you're interested in getting coached by me or any of the other guys, just go to BluffTheSpot.com/CFP and just fill out the information, like, you know, just like some basic information about yourself, like your volume, your game types, or whatever. And then we can talk things through, right? So obviously you're not committed to anything. I thought Fridays were high stakes stream. No, I just review whatever I like, Snoopy. Sometimes high stakes, low stakes, whatever. But if you want to see a certain high stakes topic, Snoopy, post it in my blog, send me a private message, and we can talk. Where can I download an RNG for ACR? I have no idea either, to be honest. I What like I mean, if let's say you're playing on stars and other sites, you just use the stars one, right? Otherwise, yeah, you just find one on Google. I actually tried to download one a while ago, and a lot of them had viruses, so you have to be careful there. Even the ones on Google, if you just Google download Google RNG, be careful. What's up, Tarbon? What's up, Isaac Heckberg? Can somebody tell me why 2.2 is better than 2x in spots? I mean, there's a very small difference, StarCraft. It's not something to really focus on. Did you watch Sean O'Malley fight? Is he the best in the division? I can't watch people like Sean O'Malley. Like, I mean, he looks like a meth dealer. He has the IQ of a meth dealer. He's not very good. He's just like, he's famous because he's just an extroverted douchebag, basically. That's it. You know, like I don't like watching interviews. I don't like following fighters. I want to see him fight, right? So I mean, you know, like Paige Van Zandt, for instance. Like she seems like a very lovely person, but she's unfortunately famous because she's pretty and because she loves attention. I just want to watch her fight. That's it, right? I love watching Amanda Nunes because she's an amazing fighter. I don't care about, you know, how many puppies she's got or like what kind of soup she eats for lunch, right? And yeah, guys like Sean O'Malley are not very good. They're just famous for having a big mouth. So yeah, very cringeworthy person. Very cringeworthy. Hope not many players from my pool are watching. Otherwise, my win rate is going down the drain. Don't worry, Ketes. If rematch, can Stipe beat Ngannou again? I mean, it's one of those fights where, you know, you're just watching it once. Like, I mean, Ngannou fought Stipe a few years ago, and he was very green, right? So, yeah, I mean, Stipe is probably the favorite. I mean, Stipe should be the favorite, but, you know, Ngannou since has beaten Junior Dos Santos, Cain Velasquez, you know, Curtis Blades again. I mean, he's fought great guys. You can say a lot of things about Francis Ngannou, but you cannot say he ducks fights, because Ngannou's never ducked anybody. Would you advise playing a check raise range when you get an imposition caller? Yeah, that's a good strategy, freebie. I love these formats. Thank you, Blade. Dillashaw lost to Cruz. Yeah, that's not so good. I mean, I think Cruz is not the best fighter, to be honest. He's a bit overrated. Why do you sound like you have corona? Don't go croaking it. Guys, I think the chances of me having corona are very slim. I actually hope I have corona because, you know, I feel great. Nothing's wrong with me. So if I still have corona now, it means it's not affecting me. So I hope I have corona. But I don't think I do. You've been standing the whole time. So guys, I would definitely recommend this. I know we're not selling this or anything, but I would definitely recommend getting a stand-up desk. I sat down for years. I noticed it wasn't good for my back. So when I started standing up, I actually started having more energy. As in, I had to sleep less at night, even though I've been sleeping 9 hours a day lately. I need less sleep. I have more energy. My posture is better. I feel less stressed. You know, when you sit down for a long period of time, you just tense up. And like right now, even my posture is awful because this stand-up desk is really bad, the one I've got now. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. It'll probably cost you around $500, which is, you know, I understand that's a lot of money, but I think there's a few things you should not be cheap about. And when it comes to stuff like that, like your posture, your pillow, stuff like that, you know, I mean, I used to sleep on a bad pillow for years, and I just had a lot of neck issues or whatever. I bought a good one for like, you know, $230, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I just started sleeping better. I just had a better mood. I mean, you know, you spend a third of your life on a pillow, right? So if you can improve like a third of your life significantly for $200, I would say that's a great investment. That's not like buying like a, you know, like a 3K Prada bag or something like that. That's just a waste of money. On a scale of 1 to 10, how big of an idiot is John Jones? I don't like. I mean, John Jones is 6'4" and the UFC lightweight heavyweight champion. I'm not gonna call this guy an idiot. John Jones needs a life coach. That's very obvious, right? And John Jones will probably tell you that. I mean, he has an issue. He is almost like a drug addict, where people relapse and then they go through therapy and whatever, and they feel great and they do great. They're involved in the community and they're distracted, but eventually they go back to drugs. And John just seems to be getting into trouble, and it's not even the worst trouble always, right? It's just like, I mean, he's driving drunk. It's stupid, right? It's not like he's killing people, but he could. It's stupid. Yeah, he needs a life coach. And John Jones has so much money. Like, if John Jones has to miss a few fights, that's gonna cost him way more money than he would spend if he just has a Chinese kid sitting next to him all day telling him not to smoke crack, right? So I think John should get a life coach. But the thing is, when you have somebody like him who's that good, that creative, that obsessed, you need to be a bit nutty. That nuttiness can break you, but it also is what made him great in the first place. So you need to find a balance. I think a life coach would make sense for John, even though it feels a bit, strange that a grown man, especially a man of John Jones' stature, whatever, would get a coach. Thoughts on the adjustable desk versus regular? Yeah, I used to stand up most of the day. Nowadays, not so much anymore. But all right, I have to practice what I preach, right? So let me stand up again. So I'm standing up again now. I mean, I don't think there's a perfect ratio, Jesus. So just do whatever you feel like. If you feel like your back's hurting, your knees are hurting, go sit down again, or go stand up. I'm tempted to apply for BTS, but I don't know if I play enough to be accepted. What do you guys tend to look for? I mean, that's why I suggested that you apply, Jim Milley. I mean, it doesn't mean you're committed to anything, right? But that we know more about you. Let's say you play pretty big stakes, but you don't play that much, right? Makes more sense. And if you play 2K hands a month, but you play on 5, well, that's not enough, right? You need to, we need to see that you have potential to grow. So just sign up and then just tell us, don't lie. I know a lot of people lie. They play 30 hands, but they say they play 50. Just tell us how many hands you play, which stakes, which formats, what you're looking to get out of the program, and we can tell you. So, because, I can't just tell you, oh, well, this is the deal we give you, we'd accept you or not, because we need to know more about you. So just go to BluffTheSpot.com/CFP, I believe, and just fill it out. I filled it out before. It takes 3 minutes. Okay, let me have a quick sip and then we start. Okay, we have more to discuss. Didn't really see the Jack 10 hand. I guess we skip it. It doesn't matter too much, right? It went something like bend and raise, I believe, but alright. We have plenty of hands to look at. So anyway, King 4-4. So we open King Jack under the gun, which is on the loose side, but it's fine, right? Especially in a pool where people likely don't 3-bet that much. And the button cold calls, and he's 15-13-0, which is very, very tight. But I believe it's only 39 hands, so I mean, I'm sure that all of you have played 15-13-0 over random 39 hands, right? So is this guy like old school Sabinho? No, probably not. Shout out to Sabinho, by the way, legend of the game. Has given me many headaches. So is he super loose? Likely not, right? But is he super tight? Maybe, but can you base that off 39 hands, really? It's funny when live regs say oh, he opened under the gun and I folded, and then the next orbit he opened under the gun again, so he must be opening super wide, so I 3-bet him with King 3 offsuit. Well, that's not good reasoning, right? I mean, that does not make sense. You need a big sample in order to draw real conclusions. Anyway, so normally this board is definitely c-bettable. The issue is that if he's playing 15-13, it's not like this guy's cold calling 6-3 suited on the button, is he? Right? He's probably cold calling hands like ace-king on the button even. So I really wouldn't hate if you just check here. But if he checks behind, I'll be putting a lot of pressure on him because, I mean, I don't expect him to check behind better than King Jack very often. He bets 3 into 5.6, and I think calling his best. We can check raise occasionally, but not with this hand, right? 10-3, we get a walk. Pretty lucky. And he could have stabbed fives on the flop. Otherwise, you know, maybe like ace-5 or 6-5. But other than that, this card is pretty blank. A lot of his hands like Jack-10 suited is brick. And he checks behind, so the 6 is also slightly worrisome, right? He could have 6s. Maybe he just has Jack-10 of spades but decided not to bet, so maybe he has 8-7, decided not to bet. But overall, I'd say we have the best hand quite often. So I wouldn't mind if you go for a block bet here, get some thin value. I really wouldn't hate that. If you believe that he is quite bluff heavy, you know, he just has a lot of hands like 10-9, Jack-10, or maybe he bluffs in like ace-jack, then check calling makes more sense. I would say against this player, going for a small bet makes a lot of sense. Jack-7 is too loose. Jack-9 suited makes sense. Jack-10 suited makes sense. Jack-7 is a bit too much. Okay, he folded very quickly, so he was likely bluffing. That's noteworthy. 8-6 is a bit loose, so unless the lineup's right, you should probably just pitch that. Same with Queen-10. Four, 5 is very easy fold. We love suited hands. 4-5 off is not suited. And we open under a gun with ace-5 suited, which is definitely standard. And we get king-9-7, which is a very drivey flop. You know, villain is going to have a lot of kings, a lot of 9s, a couple of 7s. It's like, I mean, Jack-10 offsuit makes an open-ender. Flush draws. He can have really good hands here. So you can't just blindly, like, range third pot and, you know, expect things to work out for you. This hand, I mean, we block ace king, which you may not have. Our 5 doesn't really help us. You know, we don't have a straight draw. We barely have a backdoor straight draw. We don't have a backdoor flush draw. So, you know, this hand is very weak. So I don't really mind just checking this one behind. It's just important that we also check behind good stuff, right? So maybe we want to trap with kings sometimes. Maybe we want to check back in like king queen sometimes, right? So that when he bets the turn, we're not always in trouble. He's thinking. So when he thinks like that for a long time, I mean, he's probably got like a decent hand. He's, you know, he's considering like, do I make a thin value bet? Like, do I make like a thin bluff with like queen-10 off? Or maybe he's just playing a million tables. That's possible. Who knows? And he checks again. Okay. So at this point, if he's got that medium strength hand, he's not folding, right? So betting would be to get him off hand like queen-jack, which decided not to bluff. So I would probably end up checking behind here. I wouldn't hate a bluff. And on the river 8, I mean, we can have 9-8, 8s, 8-7, right? We can value bet hands like queen. So probably you want to end up bluffing here. Trying to get him to a full hand like 6s or a 7. And he checks again. Can we ever win? We could. But it's very difficult to have worse than this, right? Like if we had like 5-4 suited, it has a pair. Like if we had like queen-jack or something, queen-10, we may have bet the flop or the turn. So it's very difficult for us to have worse than this hand. So I would probably like to see you bluff here. But we split. Okay. So he was thinking about it. Um, 10-7 would be quite loose of an open. So we see this guy's played 19, 13, 5% 3-bet so far. That's really nitty. The issue again is that it's 92 hands, right? So I played, you know, Yesterday I didn't play much. The day before I played like 1,600 hands. I'm sure that somewhere in those 1,600 hands I played 1913. I played 1913 over 92 hands. So be careful. Don't start opening really trashy hands, or because over small samples people have folded, right? So 10-7 is a bit loose. Now if over a big sample he's playing 1913, it makes a bit more sense. So yeah, I actually don't mind this fold. I thought you were gonna open personally. And so we've got another 1914 player here with, again, 0% 3-bet. So you got to be careful, right? Because, I mean, is this guy calling King 7 offsuit in a small blind? No. He's likely just calling, hands like Jack 9 suited and like, Ace 10 off and that type of stuff. So you have to be a bit careful. This hand would be an okay hand to triple barrel with. But in general, I mean, I try and be a bit careful here. Now, if he's playing 70 VPIP, that's way different, right? Snap call. Fives, I don't hate a call. 10-5 suited is a bit, is again middle and loose side, but it's okay. And so we see here with the king queen, like he folded fast, so again, you're not putting enough pressure on your opponent, right? Like if you've got like ace queen plus, let's say, for value here, you want to put a bit more money into the pot. So I get that you're just trying to fold them off of like a 5 or 6s through 9s, let's say, but and sure, he would he would do that against this size or a bigger bet, but you're not putting enough money in with your good hands. So if this spot is not as important as in the previous spot on the ace king 3 8 board, right? Because this is a button small blind spot. It's not a cutoff big blind spot, but yeah, you're not pressuring your opponents enough. I'd like to see you improve that a little bit. Woshi Donuts, sick name, bets half pot, and this is super close, right? Super close. I mean, you've got the best hand decent amount of the time. You have a backdoor straight draw, but you don't have a backdoor flush draw. Let's see. And this opponent is playing 23, 17, 8.4. So, he's not that loose, but he's not that tight. So this is extremely close. You are a little bit deeper, which helps you a little bit, right? Like if you do if you do hit your full house or your straight, you get paid a little bit more. So it's very, very close. I would like to see you call here, but again, if you fold it, I wouldn't hate it, right? If he bets like 17 and you call, that's a mistake. If he bets like 7 and you fold, that's a mistake. He just puts you in quite an ugly spot. But I'd like to see you call here. That's nice because now even if he bets big, we can call again, right? We still beat hands like 8-9, 10-9, flush draws, ace-king, random jack-tens, and he checks. So we can do two things here. Well, three things. We can bet small, we can bet big, or we can check, right? So betting big, we don't really need, right? Because if we bet big, we just make him fold his air. So if we bet small, maybe check calls ace 4 suited. Maybe he check calls ace king or whatever. Maybe check calls a flush draw. So I wouldn't hate if you bet small. I wouldn't hate if you check behind, right? If this guy's very tricky and check raises you a lot, you have to be a bit more careful. So I wouldn't hate if you bet this one, to be honest. But, it's just important that you can't just bet every single pair like this because villain will just go crazy, right? At the same time, we have to sometimes bet in order to pressure our opponent. I wouldn't mind a small bet. Mixing it up is key. And this jack is, not the greatest cards. It's not as bad as, let's say, a king. But, he's going to bet a lot of hands like queen jack on the flop that then, just give up and then, potentially value bet the river. That's the downside of checking behind here. You let him realize equity and you let him, bet again and then we're in a shitty spot. And now easy check, hoping to beat his king. And he has pocket nines. Okay. He probably felt uncomfortable value betting against potential 7s and full houses and, 10s and jacks. So I don't hate it. It's a careful but fine play. I think that describes the 100L player pool pretty well, to be honest. Careful but fine. Not doing anything extreme, at the same time sometimes lacking creativity. King 5 seems fine to raise with. I mean, I already said King 4 was, you know, alright. King 5 must be fine. 9-4 deuce is I mean, it's a better board for the big blind. He's going to improve more than you will. At the same time, how often does he hit a 4, right? How often does he defend a 4? Big blind versus cutoff. You know, yeah, sure, he'll have like King 4 suited. Sure, he'll have like, you know, Queen 4 suited or 6-4 suited. But, so he improves more than you do, but those are not great hands, right? We have 10s plus all the time, and he doesn't. He might 3-bet 9s, and, you know, we always open. So we are ahead on this board, so we can be quite aggressive. And with this hand, backdoor straight draw, king high only, big flush draw, let's be aggressive. Slim Wolfie. 7.5 out of 10 name. So you do see that the player pool is quite nitty and straightforward, right? Like, I haven't seen a single hand where people really put pressure on you. They're kind of letting you off the hook. So I don't want you to play like that. I want you to pressure these opponents. Especially guys who are a little bit less comfortable facing pressure. A lot of them wilt under pressure, right? You can just push them around a little bit. Now, guys at higher stakes who are very tricky and unorthodox, you have to be a bit more careful, right? You can't just say, well, this guy checked behind, the flush got there, I can just go crazy because he can't have a flush, right? Because at high stakes, people check back flush draws, right? Or, you know, when they snap bet, that's not necessarily a tell, or, you know, their bet sizes are a bit more balanced. But, you know, here you can be a little bit more liberal with your adjustments and say, okay, I think this is a little bit face up, I'm going to attack. Now, with 7-5, I think attacking is a little bit extreme, right? He's been tight so far, and, you know, we're paying a lot of rake, so 7-5 is not a call. And it's not really a good 3-betting hand. So I know you swirled the mouse asking for advice, but I think that's just a fold. We got 4 deuce suited here against 2.4, so we got a little discount. With lower rake, this is a close call. With the slightly higher rake, I think it's probably a fold, to be honest. If this were NL 500, I think it's a call, but NL 100, I would probably fold. Also, he's playing 20-10, so, I mean, he's not that aggressive, right? So, I think it's a close fold. Okay. Glad we agree. King 8 is a reasonable opening hand. Yeah, I wouldn't mind opening this hand. And Queen 7-3, I mean, we flop basically the nuts. So this guy's playing 44-29, you know, a bit looser. So we can expect him to cold call quite a bit. And, you know, I'd like to see you start c-betting here. If you find this guy very aggressive, maybe you can check raise as well. But I would like to see you c-bet here. It's also a board in which you can continue quite a bit, right? You know, with floats and hands like 7s. Well, not 7s, but hands like 8s and 4s and King 10, whatever. And 3 is not that relevant. Maybe he has ace-3 suited, but you have the ace of clubs in your hand, so there's only one combination left. So I'd like to really see you pressure your opponent here. I wouldn't hate if you just bet 3/4 here, targeting medium pairs as well, but I also wouldn't hate if you go for the small overbet. And he calls again. And at this point, I mean, if he slow played 7s or he has like 6-4 hearts, so be it. But I would like to see you put in a very big bet, trying to get max value from a queen. I'd like to see a big bet. I think we could have gone a bit bigger than that. So he snap folded. So that could have been like a flush draw, like King 10 of hearts. It could have just been like and like 9s that, you know, wanted to see showdown, but made its decision. And let's do ace 4 suited, and we'll go back to questions, guys. Feels like a coaching session almost. I'm keeping things a bit more relaxed, of course. I'm not going as in depth as I would go in a real coaching session. You know, it's a little bit more entertaining. But at the same time, I hope you guys learn stuff. Ace 4 suited is, you know, sometimes call, sometimes 3-bet. I'd like to see you 3-bet. this time I just randomized myself. Let's 3-bet this guy, and let's actually play the footage, so we don't have to wait until next month. Okay, seems fine. All right, good stuff. Ace-4 suited is, is a pretty nice hand to 3-bet with. Having those suited aces, they play pretty well. All right, guys. 318 viewers. Look at that. Wow. I thought I would have to show my tits for that, but we just got 318 viewers. Thanks, guys. Shout out to coronavirus. Let's see. Let's see, guys. I'm kidding, of course. I hope everybody stays safe. Scrolling. What do you think about 3-betting hands like King 9, Queen 9, Jack 9, 10 on opposition versus a recreational player who has extremely low folded 3-bet? I mean, you are playing more pots against him, which helps you, but at the same time, your hand is not fantastic. So it's a little bit of a static question, Hilo. I mean, it's not as if I'm going to recommend you always play your hand or never play your hand, right? It really depends, like, what are the positions? By the way, the quality is going down a bit. Don't know what's happening. Anyway, it depends on the positions, depends on the stack depth, depends on, like, how much of a calling station he is, for instance, right? There's many different other factors. Yeah. The quality of this... has the quality gone down for you guys as well? Okay, no complaints. All right. Content is great, MMA. This Scrimizzo coaching stuff, good balance on a lot of different styles. Thank you, Future Monka. And as always, guys, hit me up on, let me know what you'd like to see. I'm down to review whatever, Low stakes, micro stakes, high stakes. We can do anything you like. Except for the live play. That's not going to happen. Do you do short-term contracts for the CFP? Currently laid off but have played pro for 3 years. Running trade worker, Canadian Railroad. Maybe not short-term, Jesus, but we could just basically give you more time, right? So we're not going to say, hey, you have to play as many hands as a pro would because we know you don't have as much time. So it wouldn't necessarily be a very short contract, although we could set up something like that under the right circumstances, but we just say, hey, we just let you take your time. Because in the end, like, what we want from students is, like, we want them to significantly improve, right? We're not just giving a few pointers like, oh, you're overfolding the 3-bets, you're not check raising enough, like, superficial stuff like that. We really want to take you from being a good player to being an excellent player, right? And all the benefits that come with it. So if you signed up, by the time you're finished with the CFP and, like, you've been going for a while, we hope that you're a pro. We're not going to force you to be a pro. You can do whatever you like, but we want to make you good enough and make you excited enough about poker to the point where you want to be a pro and you can sustain yourself, right? So okay, I'm making a nice living right now, but I can make an even nicer living playing poker, right? And then you can play poker and maybe we'll invest in you, or maybe you can start coaching, or maybe, like, we can go around the world on different poker trips or whatever. Like, maybe you start your own business, whatever. We really want to take you from being solid to being great, as long as you're willing to work hard. So I guess I was a bit off topic, but yeah. As long as you're motivated, sign up. You once said you don't have to be intelligent to beat high stakes. Sure. In the sense that I know a couple of people who play high stakes who I don't think are particularly intelligent. At the same time, intelligence helps, right? The thing is, guys, just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you're intelligent across the board, right? There's people who have different talents. There's people, for instance, savants, for instance. They may have a very low IQ, but they may still have a photographic memory. Or for instance, they can look at, let's say, a skyline, and they can just draw it perfectly, right? Weeks after having seen it. Almost no human can do that. Everybody has different talents, so I'm not sure how IQ is measured in general. It may be general intelligence, but some people are just very strong. They just have, let's say, very strong poker instincts. At the same time, maybe their memory is not great, or maybe they lag elsewhere, right? So IQ is not the only factor for being a successful poker player. Notifying people a day before stream what you're going to do is always helpful for both sides. I'll think about that, Tarbon, but at the same time, like, we want to just invite you to come watch, right? We want to lure you in and say, hey, come watch. And maybe, because I don't want you to have any preconceived notions of our stream. As in, like, oh, that's going to suck, I'm not going to watch, or I'll watch for sure, right? Just come join, and if you don't like it, you leave, right? But maybe you'll like something you didn't think you would like. You know, it's the same as, like, food. Sometimes you try food, you think you hate it, but you end up liking it. Says the guy that never tries any new food, by the way. They said that in Mexico there's a place where you make lion burgers. Will you try it? No, absolutely not. So I don't think it's hypocritical to say you eat meat but not eating lion, but at least you eat meat. Like, not all meats are created equal, right? I'm not talking about their health benefits or detriments, but I would want something sustainable. You could argue that killing a cow is more ethical than killing a chicken, right? Because if you kill a chicken, 4 or 5 people can eat. If you kill a cow, what, like 100 plus people can eat? So it's basically one sentient being that is still pretty dumb, but at the same time, you know, has rights. You know, you're killing one being, right? So you could say, like, you might as well kill a really fat one because more people can eat. Now, lions may have some, you know, some meat on them, but, you know, they have an important other task. And I don't think that, you know, like, people going to Africa to shoot lions to then take them back to the Americas or to Europe is very sustainable, right? That just seems like, I mean, you're just doing that for yourself. So yeah, I wouldn't support that. Also, lions are very muscular. They probably don't have flavorful meat, I would guess. So yeah, wouldn't really be into that. How much weed do you smoke during 420? I don't smoke weed. Like, I could probably handle it the way, like, a 13-year-old girl could handle a kiss on the cheek by her new boyfriend. What do you think about opening 5x at micro stakes because of the high rake? No, I am not a fan of that. Senny? I hope I have Corona were his last words. That's funny because I actually made that joke a few days ago. I also said, like, I hope I have Corona, and I was like, well, that's going to be on my gravestone. So we've got the same bad sense of humor, future Monka. What about a gaming chair? Yeah, and I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite because my chairs have generally not been so great, but yeah. I think having a proper setup, you know, it is a bit of an investment. You're going to feel it. But if that just, you know, makes you more comfortable, you have to remember that poker is a marathon, not a sprint, right? So if you can just extend your longevity by just having a better time playing, you know, it takes less of a toll on your body, that will be super plus EV. And it's not just about EV, right? It's fine to make yourself happy. It's fine to, you know, it's nice to enjoy the ride as well. So yeah, I would say, guys, invest in a decent chair, a decent desk, decent screens, you know, just decent equipment, decent pillow, whatever. That doesn't mean you have to then buy stuff that's you know, unnecessary. What do you think about opening 18 BBs? Because, all right, funny. Can Marlon Moraes beat Peter Yan? He's gonna have a lot of success in the first round because he's so explosive. At the same time, you know, Peter Yan is a very skilled, very durable fighter, right? So basically, the longer the fight goes, the better Peter Yan's chances. That's one of those fights where I wouldn't really have I wouldn't really favor any. Like I'll probably favor Peter Yan slightly. I'm just saying that, you know, I wouldn't really be rooting for anybody. Generally, I root for somebody, but I wouldn't really be rooting for anybody. Let's see. $230 pillow. Yeah, I wanted to get a better pillow, finally. So I went there and I was like, yeah, I'm going to spend $40-50 maximum. That must be a really nice pillow. And I said, like, they show me a pillow and they're like, oh, this is the cheapest one we've got. I was like, which employee will offer you the cheapest product you've got? Why would you do that? You would offer something like slightly more expensive than average, right? And you can always negotiate your way down as me. Why would you do that? And then it's like, oh yeah, it's 230 euros. I'm like, Jesus. But then I felt it and it was like, it was really comfortable. And I thought, I mean, I should not be in it for once. I should just get it. And then I actually forgot it in Malta. So, and now my friend has it. Let's see. Let's continue with poker in a minute, Larry. If I earn 40k GBP per year, would you consider trying to eventually transfer to Poker Pro? Also depends on where you live, right? If you make 40k in London, that's not a whole lot, I suppose. But if you live in, if you live like in a cornmeal, how do you call it? Like a cornmeal or something? If you live in the middle of nowhere, that's probably plenty. So yeah, I mean, 40. If you, if you can make more money than that. Also, the thing is, there's going to be a gap in your CV, so you're going to have to make a decent amount of money. Also, poker is not as sustainable as, let's say, your current job is. So yeah, you have to make you can just start being a semi-pro, right? Just play a lot during the weekend, maybe play like, one session a day after work, and just see how far you get. And if you see that you're already coming close to your current income, but with like almost no effort compared to what you could be putting in as a pro, then yeah, sure, go for it. But if you're making 5k a year playing poker and you're already putting in a lot of work, it's good to make like 5k a year from poker, but not be a pro. There's a lot of downsides to being a pro as well. So yeah, mostly like I would say, take your time, write down the pros and cons, and come up with a plan. Not just let ambition and emotion lead the way. Who are you picking, Habib versus Tony? I'll pick Habib. Well, I'll pick it never happening. But if it happens, Habib versus Tony. Alright. Alright. Let's do some more hands. It's funny, like, we had 320 views, and then I talk for 5 minutes, and it goes down to 266. So fuck you guys. Come on. You have to support us. Let me have another sip, and then we look at some more hands. Alright. We've got queens, pretty hand, always raising. And queen 7 suited. This is a hand you shouldn't 3-bet very often, especially when your opponent is called Linus. So I like the call. And king 6-5 is like, it's like a pretty decent board for both of you. And this hand is actually not the worst to bluff raise with. You have like blockers to queens, a king queen, you have a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw. So you could also call your hand, but assuming villain doesn't bet too big, folding is out of the question. Your hand doesn't have that much showdown value, but it has a lot of potential. It also has potential as a stab, for the same reasons. If villain has queens, he likely checks the flop, so you block some of his check calls. If he's got ace queen, he may check call. You're blocking hands like, you have a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw once again. So I think stabbing these types of hands, of course, stabbing hands like, like 7-4, and I would say 8-7 makes sense. But you also want to stab some kind of backdoor hand sometimes. So I wouldn't hate if you bet. Can't always do this, right? Can't always stab at any backdoor hand. But I don't mind. Like here, we said like, 8-7, 8-7 we can stab. Now, that's a straight now. So if we only stab 8-7, now we have the nuts too often, right? And then villain is just going to fold. So I wouldn't hate if you put in a big bet here and really pressure your opponent. As we said, this player pool is a little bit on the nitty side, so we can, we can put additional pressure on them. Meanwhile, with the queens, I don't mind the line of just checking twice and betting here. You also sized up a bit versus a looser opponent who has plenty of calls on this board, so I don't really hate that. I think that's a fine play. And we bet again with queen 7. Okay. Again, could have picked a bigger sizing. Like, we're going to have 8-7 off there and even suited quite a bit. And he will have it sometimes, but not as often. So, and we also have sets and 2 pairs and even has like king, queen. So we could have bet a little bit bigger there. I'm not saying you should just go all in right away, but we could have sized up a little bit. So we've seen that a couple of times now. Like, you're betting quite often and you're betting quite big, but you're not betting really big. And sometimes you have to bet really big too, right? Okay. Jack 8 is the fine steal from the small blind. It's not the greatest hand, but it's a winning steal generally in this lineup. Ace 10 is quite close because, you know, you're a little bit less deep, which, you know, is a little bit more awkward. Also, this player has been playing 13 so far, right? Only 8 hands. And who knows? Maybe this player just raises like a normal hand 2.5x, but goes big for 3x, right? Well, with a good hand. So that could be a tell, maybe not. So it's quite close, to be honest. I would probably 3-bet this hand half the time or so. I actually don't mind folding. If you believe that his sizing is a potential tell, then yeah, I don't mind that. Okay, getting a fold with ace-5. With ace-queen here, so the question is, do you want any flat calls at all? At 100 NL, it's pretty close. If this were at 500 zoom, I would be flatting here a decent amount. You know, ace-queen is a combo flat and 3-bet. But you're paying more rake. So we see this. The big blind is kind of nitty. Small blind seems kind of good, actually, judging from his stats, and he has a full stack. So yeah, combination of 3-bet and call. And, you know, you have to look at your opponent, obviously, as well. See what Trist is up to. Maybe he's very loose, very tight. Maybe he likes to fold a lot. Maybe he likes to 4-bet a lot. There's a lot of different factors that you know, that turn ace-queen from like a close 3-bet to like a close call, right? And king 7-3 is obviously a great board for us because, I mean, we just have a, you know, big king's advantage, ace-king advantage. We're also going to have hands like, you know, king-jack suited that are just good. And there's not much going on down below when it comes to like the 3 and the 7, right? Can he have 3s and 7s sometimes? Yeah, sure. But not super often. So I would like to see a bet very aggressively here. Okay. And he folds. Pichara Coach. Now that's a name. And king queen here, your hand is just very, very bad. So I'd definitely not go ahead and 4-bet here. Calling would be even worse. Your hand is just not very playable out of position. Especially after opening under the gun, right? And king 10-7 is a pretty good board for you. You're going to have a lot of good hands here. At the same time, he's also going to have hands like king 10 and 7s. So you can be pretty aggressive here. But it's not like you can just go absolutely insane. Playing very well so far, actually. Ace-Jack, I would just end up folding here. Your hand, I mean, you're out of position to Woshi, who's got you dominated quite a bit. And when Merrill calls here, he can easily have hands like ace-king, ace-queen as well, hands like Jack. So, yeah, your hand is just not very playable. I would end up folding here. With more reads, we could 4-bet, we could, you know, we could 4-bet perhaps, but I don't really like a call. I like this play more than I like a call. So Woshi's going to be in a tough spot now, right? Because you're representing, I mean, you're getting a great price on a call, so Woshi's thinking, ooh, is this guy 4-bets now? I mean, this must look pretty strong. We see Woshi knows that Merrill, you know, is a loose player. He's likely not going to fold. So, you know, he'd be thinking like, does villain really go crazy here with like ace-jack, ace-queen, king-jack? So he's going to be pretty honest now. Very honest. Got aces all in. So nice try. I like the heart, I like the ambition, but I think folding would have been a bit better. Also, I would check the replayer to see what happened. Get some information. Maybe like villain cold call aces, right? The 2 or 3-bet. Maybe he cold called 5-3 suited. Maybe he just called a reasonable hand like 9s or 10s. It's good to have information. All right. 3-betting cabeza. And since I'm an expert at Spanish nowadays, I know that means head. Or face, I guess. Maybe not an expert after all. King 9 suited versus a small blind cold caller who's been kind of nitty. This guy can also have pretty good hands, right? So be careful here. And this hand, I think, serves well as a check behind sometimes. You know, you've got backdoors but only gut shots, right? You don't have a backdoor flush draw. You can't expect too many folds on this board because if he has any pair, he's not folding. He can have ace queen and hands like tens. Yeah, definitely seems like this definitely seems like a leak. When people cold call in the small blind, you're c-betting range way too much. You should be more careful there. And ace king here, this is kind of ugly. You know, it's ugly in the sense that we're a little bit deeper, and it's also ugly in the sense that it's under the gun versus MP. You're not going to be 3-betting him very often, and so far he's played 16-11, and that definitely seems like a trend in these games. I mean, we've seen like 5+ sub 20 VPIP players already. I don't know, maybe that's just maybe that's a coincidence. But when I get 4-bet by somebody who plays 16-11 over a small sample, under the gun, slightly deeper, that raises alarm. That raises red flags for sure, right? So, I mean, I think all three options make a bit of sense, to be honest. Folding would be quite exploitable, right? We can't just fold ace king to a 4-bet. However, honestly, I mean, am I folding this hand against a regular anytime soon? No. Against a good regular? No. But I think it's a fold. I think it's just a fold. The problem with calling is that the pot's going to be 55.5 already, right? Sorry, 53.5. And, you know, if you hit a king or an ace, you're probably going to have to go with it one way or another. But, you know, you're also going to get blown off your hand a lot. So if this guy does 4-bet ace jack suited or, you know, whatever, he's got king jack suited, maybe ace queen, you know, you're often going to get kicked off your hand. So all three options make sense, to be honest. But when we say this guy's very, like, this player pool is very nitty, you see nitty stats, big 4-bets while being a bit deeper. I'm not saying folding is the best play, but it would show a lot of discipline if you are able to fold this hand. If you're on a big downswing and you're kind of sick of the game, you know, for a while, I don't see you folding this hand. I don't hate calling even. This is just the issue, right? You get like an okay flop, and now he's just always gonna bet, and then you side call, and then a lot of run-ons you just lose. So slow playing hand like aces here works great, right? 10-8 is a loose but fine open. And I like the fact that you size up here on the king queen 8. Yeah. So I mean, we see this guy. I mean, bet small. He's likely irregular. I would also take my time a little bit more. You're playing quite fast in some spots, and I mean, in big pots, take your time a little bit more with good hands and bad ones. I assume he's going to go all in, and he just has kings. Yeah, I mean, I think you save some money by not shoving here. We have the ace of diamonds as well, so we block hands like, you know, ace jack suited that might be shoving. I can't remember the last time I saw a 16-11 player shove here with like ace 9 of hearts, to be honest. So I'd like to see you just fold. I think that's not a very tough decision, but, you know, it is a small indication that, you know, we maybe could have folded pre-flop. I absolutely can't blame you, and maybe I just don't know this pool as well as you do, but I just don't see, you know, I just don't see this player pool making gigantic bluffs. So, I mean, if somebody moves up and plays against me now, I would just make gigantic bluffs, you know, in case I know them. That would be a good meta game. That would be a good meta game to have on your side. Anyway, I would fold here. And with king 10 suited, yes, your hand is worth this much, but I would just ISO 3.5x. He's played 13-8 so far, right? So it's not like he's just limp calling 5 for offsuit. One hand at a time. 10-8-6 is not the greatest board for you. It's a pretty good board for him, depending on what he limp calls. But I assume he's going to limp call mostly medium strength hands, which, smash this board. So I still don't mind a bet here, but you have to be careful. Also like a little bit of a smaller bet. And with fours, Queen 10-8 is a board that really hits your opponent, right? We see again 13-11, 6, very nitty strategy. So this board is going to smash him. He might have hands as strong as pocket 8s, pocket 10s, ace, queen, etc. So yeah, I would like to see you be careful against these guys. And with the fours, it's close, but we could end up bluffing our hand. I wouldn't hate it, but we do have hands like suited aces, suited kings, some hands like 5-4, 5-6. So we have some hands that can never win, and generally when you can never win, you want to bluff rather than a hand that occasionally wins, because we do beat like ace 3, deuces, random give ups. So, but do we win? How often do we win this hand at showdown? Maybe 20% of the time, maybe 25. But it's something, right? Yeah, you're playing way too fast, even with the Jack-10 here. I like to defend, I like to check on the turn, and even on the river. I agree completely with your line. Your line's been perfect so far, but I'd like to see you take your time more. Because it's pretty obvious what to do with this hand, but think about your range a little bit more. Think about what you'd like to do with all of your hands. And he's got ace-jack suited. Could make a note on that. It's a pretty passive line, but it's okay. It's pretty tricky, right? So this is the type of guy that will show up with a couple more good hands potentially. Yeah, and that's one of the downsides, right, of the check, that you let him win with hand like 5s and 6s, even though he likely wouldn't have called that to a river bet. Okay. King 8 is a loose open, but seems okay. Six, 7 is again a loose open, but seems fine. You see that these guys aren't really 3-betting you very often, right? So you can get away with a bit more. And this is a really sweet spot with King Jack suited. You have plenty of money behind. He's leaving you a very high SPR, so there's a lot of playability for you. So I'd like to see you call here. Oh, something happened. Let's cover King Jack first. So he tanks a bit and then pots it. Usually when somebody unknown does that, I would be quite scared. However, 50, 13, 100. So he's 3-bet 100% so far. Okay. I would guess that this guy has a few more moves. Also, thin read, but people who have a shark avatar are generally very aggressive. Yes, write that down, guys. Shark avatars usually equal aggression. And this hand is really nice. This card is really nice, right? Because even if this were a tell and he just has aces, now you're now ahead. So I wouldn't be looking to fold anytime soon. And if he doesn't have you beat, it's very difficult for him to now outrun you. He has to have exactly 6-7 or flush draw. So he bets really big, and now he checks. So he's saying that he overplayed like jacks on the flop, let's say, and then checked, or that this card scares him in the sense that he has aces. So I wouldn't hate if you just go for a small bet here. Yeah, I wouldn't hate if you just go for a small bet. Honestly, I think this guy is full of shit. I wouldn't even hate if you just check behind. He just 3-bets you small. He pots it. Now he checks. It just looks like he just tried to make a move and he's got nothing. So I wouldn't even hate if you check here and lure a bet, get him to bet the river. Be a bit deceptive. Yeah. I think he just folds quite often here. Of course, he's gonna shove now that I've said that. Let's see. He's thinking, which means he probably has a medium strength hand. So maybe he does have hand like queens. Maybe he does have hand like sevens or something. Tens, by the way, is a nice squeeze hand. Making me nervous. Come on. Okay. So he tank folded. I don't think he was Hollywooding necessarily, so he must have had like an okay hand. So he potted the flop with an okay hand, maybe like ace queen or something, and then considered a check call. So I would have liked a smaller bet on the turn and maybe, you know, shove big on the river. But that guy I think has some moves in him. I would be looking that guy up a little. I would be looking that guy up sometimes. I would say generally at 100 now, like when people go for huge bets, huge raises, you know, be careful. Like for instance, this play, right, with the tens. You squeeze a little bit on the small side for my liking, but you squeeze, which I approve of. And then this guy just min 4-bets you. And can he be bluffing? Absolutely. Will he bluff? Most likely yes, but is he doing it enough? I don't know, to be honest. So in theory, this is just a pretty clear call, often check raising all in on the flop. But if you believe that these guys are really nitty, then I wouldn't hate an exploitative fold. So again, you know, if I play 50-100 and let's say good regular 4-bets me here, you know, obviously I'm not folding, but you know, if people just play their, you know, if just people play a bit more face up and aren't willing to put in big money with, you know, weaker hands, then tens don't play so great anymore. Don't hate the Jack-9 call, especially when the flop's pretty good. Not great, but it's pretty good. And I don't hate this, I don't hate the fold of tens. Again, if you're folding tens after the squeeze, that's definitely exploitable, but if you believe he's just nitty, it's okay. You know, the goal to beating these stakes is not by playing the most complicated, fancy strategy. You have to be quite careful here because Hot and Busty, 9 out of 10 name by the way, and his name is probably Boodle, but we're going to call him Booty, so 7 out of 10 name. They can both have a lot of tens, right? They can both have hands like Jack 10 or tens or 10-9, a random King 10, Ace 10, you know, maybe even looser than that. You know, Booty's playing quite loose at the moment, so you could have hands like 10-7 and whatever, 10-6. So I would be careful here. Your hand is nowhere near the nuts. Okay, they both fold. Very lucky. How long have I been going, by the way? Almost 2 hours. Time really flies, huh? When you're having fun. This King 9, I would definitely like to see you 3-bet because in the previous hand, the guy only had 68 big blinds behind, I believe, and he made it 3x. So right now, you know, you both have 120 plus, and he made it a bit smaller. And this guy is also playing 50-10, whereas the other guy was playing sub 20 VPIP, right? 13 VPIP, I believe. I like it. Don't mind the 3-bet sizing either. And Boodle / Booty opens 3x. Easy fold at the Queen Deuce. Nothing to say. Nothing more to say. And on Ace King 4, we can employ a couple different strategies. So the first one, which is the one I believe you're going to implement, is the small bet, the quarter pot, third pot bet range strategy, which is fine. Against somebody unknown, I'd be a bit more willing to mix it up, if anything. If you were to mix it up, this hand is perfect to mix it up with, right? Your hand needs almost no protection. It's not that valuable, but at the same time, you know, once you go to showdown, you often win. If no bets have once you get the showdown with no bets having gone in, you can tell I'm stumbling, mumbling, and everything. But now we just want to bet big. We could be behind. Maybe has fours or ace king. This guy, it seems to be, loose and passive, so he could have ace-king for sure, but, if he has ace-king, he has ace-king. I still see him calling with lots of, pairs, pair plus flush draws, combo draws, worse aces, so I'd like to see bet here. Okay. All right, guys. Let's do. Let's look at some questions. All right. Basically, you're telling me to you guys are telling me to shut the fuck up because you know, we're back to over 300 viewers again. But on my screen, I cannot even read the table. That's how bad the quality is. Are you guys seeing everything fine? I've seen no complaints, so that must just be me. Alright, sweet. Love this review more than 10k or Zoom. I appreciate that, Sick the Joker. It's okay. Alright. How can I manage chronic pain? I'm not a doctor, Atalanti. Quality is okay. Alright. Is this a recording of MMA? Well, I am streaming, but I'm recording I'm reviewing a student's footage. I call Match Cry. What nicknames are 10 out of 10 except for MMAsherdog? No, my name is like 5 out of 10. My screen name game is not very good. What's 10 out of 10? I've seen a couple of guys, like some guys called Ace to Mouth. That's pretty good. And I really like the name Billion Mux. He's an old school heads up player who hasn't played in a while. So yeah, it's just clever, right? It's just a fun name. So I've seen Kiss My Ace. That's a guy who used to play High Stakes No Limit. I believe he mostly plays PLO nowadays. Yeah, he was always a good player, so I always enjoyed his screen name. Let's see. Super interesting and fun today. 10 out of 19. Wow. 10 out of 19 Blade. That's not very good. 10 out of 10 I would happily take. Maybe it was was a typo. So let's see. I'm just scrolling up, looking for questions. Alright, just seems like comments, not questions. Alright, let's go down. Am I doing more like this stuff? Alright. Alright, thanks guys. I mean, I didn't think that I would get such a great review, so I appreciate that. I actually thought like, oh, we're gonna do this, and you know, it's gonna be fun for the student, and, you know, we're gonna make a nice YouTube video out of it, but everybody will like, oh, we don't care about NL100, but you know, I guess it's more applicable to a lot of you guys, right? You see like plays like big calls at NL10K, but you know, like, well, I don't play against these guys, right? I don't play in this meta game. It's just different for me. So why would I care about games I won't be playing in anytime soon? Well, first off, you maybe if you work hard, but I get it, right? You want to have information right now, information that applies to you right now. So okay, I'll be doing more of this stuff. We can even let's do a raffle again or something. You know, we do a raffle and then the winner just gets his footage reviewed. Why not? I mean, and also, you know, selfish speaking just for myself, this is really easy to do in the sense that I can just, you know, pause and play the footage and comment, right? I can do this for 10 hours straight if I had a better voice. This is not very stressful. Navigating between all kinds of software and whatever, that's way more stressful. What are your thoughts on monotone flop c-bet sizing? Generally, you want to go small, Gaspar. Yeah. Alright, let's do a few more minutes, guys, and then we wrap it up. So, we got like 5 to 10 more minutes. And I'm not a prostitute. I don't work 55 minutes and charge for an hour, so don't worry. Drink tequila for a better voice. No, thank you. I'm a terrible drinker. Most of us don't play on 10k or 500. Gotta stick with what most public people play. Sure. Well, I don't know the exact demographic of our audience, right? So I know a lot of you guys probably play like low stakes, low mid stakes. So some of you guys may not play poker at all. So I want to entertain everybody. Can you review the 6-7 delayed c-bet? Cutoff versus button. Which table and how far back was that? No Barari. Table 3. Are you sure? Because I'm... okay. Sure. Okay. So, 6-7 and MP. It's a loose but fine raise. We've got a cold call by somebody who doesn't have a full stack, so maybe he or she's a little bit weaker, but who knows. 10-8-4 looks innocent, but is not that innocent in the sense that he hasn't 3-bet once, so he could have 10s, he could have 8s, he could have 4s. He doesn't have that many other great hands. Maybe 10-8 he's got. I would guess he doesn't have 8-4. It's a bit loose. But, you know, he's got a lot of pairs here. Like, not only sets, he's got hands like 10-9 suited, ace-10 off, etc. So, and you're often going to raise big cards that just miss this board. So this board is not terrible for you, but it's not as good as it looks. So I actually don't mind having, you know, a pretty passive flop strategy, which our hero does employ. And he just snap checks the flop, right? So that could be a bit of a tell. Again, that doesn't mean they can't have a good hand, right? But, you know, let's say he has pocket 4s. Does he really snap check behind in like half a second? Maybe, really. He could. But, you know, probably not, right? If he had 4s, I would guess that he would bet 90% plus of the time. So on this turn now, right, you've played kind of passive. So we've got a lot of good hands. We've got a lot of hands like aces we checked, or like sets and, you know, whatever. We have plenty of bluffs as well, like this one. So I think this is a really excellent hand to bluff and really put pressure on him. So I gave some feedback earlier on just putting more pressure on your opponents in certain spots with like bigger bets, and it looks like you were actually doing that. So I actually really like this play. You know, you're just saying, listen, I don't think you have 10s or 8s or 4s very often anymore. You likely just have like 5s or ace queen, or, you know, maybe like queen jack, just a, you know, a weaker hand, and I'm gonna punish you. I'm just going to punish you for punishing you for cold calling a weaker hand and not having a great hand. And I can have all the good hands. So I think this is an excellent way of putting pressure on your opponent. And you also see that imposition should be trapping sometimes, right? Otherwise, you just go like bam, 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 full pot, overbet, all in, whatever. And imposition can't do shit. So imposition has to be tricky sometimes and actually check back in like 4s. So, but I don't think that happens too much. Now, does OTB do that? Yes. Not often, but sometimes, right? You still want to bet most of the time because, I mean, you have a set. But you want to check back occasionally. But I think against the average, you know, a little bit more of a face-up opponent, I think that putting a lot of pressure on your opponent makes a lot of sense. So I think it's an excellent play. So, yeah, I like it. All right. Now, at least one person can sleep in peace tonight. What boards do you c-bet the largest size on? Generally boards that are very good for you. Hello. Like, for instance, ace king deuce. That's a really good board for you. You know, because we generally have like a, you know, a set and 2-pair advantage. I play micros, but you seem to be very capable in this pool. Nice job. Yeah, let's give it up for KTEX. So I hadn't reviewed this I did not review this footage before streaming. So, you know, like that made me a bit nervous because I'm like, you know, maybe he didn't play his best, and I don't want him to look like a monkey, you know, in front of 300 people. But no, I think, I mean, I've seen a decent amount of footage of Hunter and L in the last few years from students, and, you know, you're probably the most, or, you know, at least top 3 most impressive players I've seen. So, you know, as long as you make a few adjustments, you know, even without those, you should be winning quite a bit. So as long as you keep playing a lot, you keep focusing on quality of play, you improve your game as much as you can. You know, obviously you practice good bankroll management. You try and improve your mental game, right? You try and tick every single box necessary to, you know, be a successful player, and you'll be moving up in no time. I mean, just the fact that I said, hey guys, who wants to have his footage reviewed, right? Don't be nice. Stop being that guy who's like, yeah, but if I ask, maybe I look rude. No, I came into the chat, like we have group chats where like, you know, we just discuss things. And I'm like, guys, who wants to get his footage reviewed? Obviously, when I come to you, I need footage because I want to review somebody. So if you want to be reviewed by me, don't be nice. Don't be like, oh, but this guy, like, this guy has been struggling a bit. Yes, if you see one of the other students has been struggling, talk a bit, you know, talk some hands with him, give him some advice. You're all in it together, right? And we can all watch the stream together, but you have to go after yourself. So if I say I need somebody's footage, you should be the first person to message me like 1 minute later and say, can I have it, right? And that's usually the guy who gets it. But if you're very complacent and you're not grabbing a chance, it's just a lost chance, right? So also, you know, and the thing is, I'm saying that and I'm being a little bit harsh because that's not my style either, right? I've done that before as well, where I'm like, you know, I'd rather just like keep my mouth shut and wait and miss an opportunity than potentially be rude. Whereas nowadays, I'm a little bit more direct, where I'm more like, you know, I want something, I'm going to go get it, right? Whether it's like, you know, a chance at poker or whatever. You see a pretty girl on the street or like, you know, you want to learn anything or you want to get anything, you just got to go for it, right? I mean, why not? What's the worst that can happen? Anyway, we're getting off topic again. So yeah, shout out to KTEX. Thank you for providing the footage. We will be uploading this on YouTube eventually once we've cut out all my stumbles and my burps and everything. So stay tuned for that. So if you guys want to, you know, if you want to support us, please do by subscribing on YouTube. Let me link it to you guys. I haven't linked anything in a long time. Yeah, so if you want to support us, subscribe on YouTube, just like the videos. It, you know, it doesn't cost you anything, doesn't really cost time. And if you want to sign up as a student, you know, we do all kinds of stuff. So right now I did a footage review. Obviously I kept it a little bit light, right? I mean, you know, I didn't go into detail as much as I would have in a coaching session. So yeah, we do that stuff, hand reviews, database analysis, pool analysis, specific topics, like for instance, check raising flop, mixed strategies in position, you know, calling down aggression, everything, right? Mental game, approach to the game, everything that turns you into a better player, right? Then everybody has different needs, right? Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. So if you go to the site, if you click on CFP, you can sign up as a student. You can sign up for the party poker deal, which, you know, is still something that I can't really comprehend. You know, it almost feels like I'm being trolled. You know, if you want to sign up there, you can just sign up, play variance free, and be paid out guaranteed to minimum 2 BB, even when you're losing. And if you want to buy one of the products, you might as well use the special discount code, get 20% off, which is actually too much. Who made up 20%? That sounds like way too much. Anyway, that's not my decision. So thanks for joining, guys. Please give me feedback on what to review next. I'm open to anything, okay? So have a good day, and we'll see each other Tuesday at 6 p.m. Euro time, okay? See you.